Hi, my name is Gregory Germain, and I'm a recording engineer, mixing engineer here in Tokyo, Japan. I'm working mainly with Japanese and Korean artists, and my panel of genre is pretty wide. I do R&B, J-pop, dance music, some bands, so it's really eclectic. So I use VU meters in my daily routine of mixing and recording every day, and with my ears, I would say it's a centerpiece of my workflow for judging loudness. So as you know, nowadays people are consuming music on streaming platforms. So the way this streaming platform I built it, it's really interesting. On this platform, you have a very wide, huge catalog of different music from different period of time. So in the same playlist, you can have a song from the 50s and a song that just been released yesterday. So a song from the 50s doesn't have the same volume, same loudness than than a modern song. So the engineers who created these platforms, they created a kind of algorithm which work like a limiter, and every time the song is reaching a certain threshold, the limiter is ducking the song. In the other hand, if your song is too quiet, then the algorithm is bringing your song up. So when you're mixing and you're with the client, with the artist, and everybody's happy, you're sending your song to the mastering, you don't want to certain algorithm or program alterate your creation. So that's why it's extremely important to get control of your headroom when you're mixing, so the algorithm doesn't work too much on your song. That's why having a VU meter with a digital meter and use both at the same time can really help you. The first day I had the FORENO in my hands, my initial thought that it was really beautiful and really easy to read the volume on it. And for me, a VU meter has to be big, very luminous, and sometimes you're not always sitting in front of the VU meters. Sometimes you're somewhere in your room, you're like looking for something, and the drummer is hitting the snare, or somebody is smashing a mic, and you want to see what's happening. So it has to be easy to read anywhere in the studio. So the biggest advantage of the FORENO is the attenuation knob in front of the device. So having the attenuation knob in front of it, it's extremely practical, and you can put it down a few dB. So if you have, for example, a limiter on your master bus when you're mixing, it can help you to read the volume in a more natural way. Another advantage to have the FORENO in your system, in your routine, is usually a VU meter with an attenuation knob are pretty expensive. So personally, I was looking for VU meters that had attenuation knob on it, but most of them were overpriced. And the FORENO has all the advantage of a normal like VU plus the attenuation knob. So you have all the advantages at a very modest price. There is different practical techniques you can apply to control your headroom, and the VU meters can really help you to get to that point. So controlling your headroom will prevent that your master bus will not overload, your plugins will not overload, your DA from your sound card will not overload, and at the end of that, your speakers and your ears. So the less overloading you have on your mix, the less saturation you have. So your mix become more clear and more open. And when you deliver it to the mastering engineer, he has more room to work with. if you're struggling to get a wider and bigger mix sound, even if you are an engineer, producer, or musician, you should consider to get a VU meter to change your scale of loudness. So to calibrate your VU meters, you need to research your audio interface calibration. So in my case, I use the AVID HDIO, and the AVID HDIO is calibrated at -18, but depending on geographic place. So for example, in Japan, most of the studios are working in -16 dB, but in the US, they work at -18. In some movies, they work at -20. You have to choose your reference level. So for example, mine is -16. And if you use any DAW, you can just pop up a signal generator with 1K tone. And when you opening this tone, it reads -16 on Pro Tools. And this has to be 0 VU on your meter. And you have to be careful of the attenuation knob has to be at 0 too. And on the back of the device, you have two small screws, so you can use a small driver, and you can just move the needles one by one, so you can read -16 equals 0 VU. So if you are -18, you can just bring this to -18, and then your reference becomes -18, and then on this VU I'm -2, so I have to add 2 dB. So if you're -18, just take your driver and bring in 2 dB up, and same if you're at -20. So that's the way you can calibrate your VU. So when you are trying to control your headroom, for example, on this song, which is more like a R&B hip-hop song, you want the kick drum and the bass and the vocals to be the main elements that the listeners is listening to. So to have the kick and the bass and the vocal at the same time in front of your mix, you can use the VU meter to help you to achieve this. So when you're building your mix at the beginning of your balance, if you set up your kick to be the main instrument, and for example, let's say to be at -5, you can then add bass, and bass should be like around plus 3 dB or something, and you want to try to get to 0 VU. So when you get your vocals and bass, you should be around 0 VU. And depending on how much bass and low end you have, for example, if you're dealing with a lot of bass, the way the VU will react to bass is really different from, for example, a snare drum. So if you take a snare drum, you can see that the needle is not moving that much as the bass is moving, because low end, the way the VU is responding to low end is really different. So when you're mixing, you can just look at the VU, and it can give you an answer of how much bass you need or how much low end you need in your song, and you can quickly achieve a very healthy volume. And now I don't have a limiter on my master bus, but if I add, for example, a limiter, So you can see that my needles is overloading. So I can just attenuate it from a few dB, and then it's way more easier to check the levels. For example, when you're on the hook, it's extremely powerful, but when you're on the verse, it's less quieter. So maybe you can, I don't know, make some automation on the kick on the vocals so you can reach 0 VU. So you have a more consistent volume in the whole mix. Also, when you have the limiter on and you have the attenuation on, you can, with the limiter on, you can see how much dynamics you can keep after limiting. So, because the VU is still moving, you can see if it's too much. If the needles were like not moving a lot, that would mean that your mix is extremely compressed. But on this mix you can see that it's moving with the tempo of the song. So it means my headroom is controlled. If you use this with something like that, like you can use the VU to give you a more a musical feel of the loudness, and use a more digital meter to give you information on how much headroom you still have for your streaming platform. So now I have the limiter on, but for example, if I remove it, you can see that I'm right at -16. So I'm right at -16 LUFS, which is the recommendation for Spotify and YouTube. And you can see I'm at 0 dB most of the time. So you can use these two scales to make your mix sound open, but at the same time sound big.